Welcome to There's Hope. My name is Phyllis Anderson, and I serve as a chaplain at the Yakima County Jail. And we have a guest today, Alfredo Orozco, who has been in the Men's God Pod. And actually, you're the first man that I've been able to have you give your testimony and interview you. So I'm excited about that. So let's get started. Thank you for coming today, Alfredo.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to share, because some people know what the God Pod is and some people don't. And it is actually a faith unit, is what it's called. We don't currently have a women's pod, but we still do have a men's pod. And I think you get to go in and teach a little bit there. And but it has 24 men. I think your pod probably was about 60, wasn't it?
Yeah, up to 60.
Yeah. It was a large pod. We don't still have that, but we do have the men's pod that is 24. And teachers come in there, chaplains come in there and teach, and there's a wonderful transformation that happens. You weren't transformed in the God Pod, but you were transformed before. But before we get to that part of your testimony, I do want to ask you, what caused you to end up in jail?
Well, that's a long question.
Yeah.
I would like to start from, I was born and raised here in Yakima,
Right.
Washington. And I grew up in a Christian family. We grew up in Assemblies of God Church, Pentecostal.
Mm-hmm.
And my life was very, just protected by my mom and my dad. All I knew was prayer, church, children's church.
Mm-hmm.
But I knew that also my family were very deeply involved in gangs. And so my dad tried to cover us from that,
Right.
from that lifestyle, which he did a great job of, and so did my mom.
Mm-hmm.
But at the age of 9, I was molested by a family member.
Wow.
So my dad, he was in ministry himself, and he would open the doors to people to come into our home and help them out and stuff like that. And we were helping family, actually, as they were coming from Mexico. That was 9 years old. At the age of 10, my dad ended up leaving the home. And so, everything that was taught to me,
Right. Turned upside down.
it did.
Yeah.
It really did.
Mm-hmm.
It became a lie,
Wow.
to be honest. And I thought that everything that was taught to me was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was really easy for me to integrate within that lifestyle of gangs and drugs. And so I can't really tell you exactly when it started, my drug use. I can tell you that it was at around that same age that I started smoking tobacco, drinking alcohol, and smoking marijuana. And even at church, a lot of the youth they were gang involved.
Right.
And so knowing that I didn't want to be of either color, and here in Yakima it's norteño or sureño,
Right.
and just be part of. At the age of 13, what really pushed me into a gang was to really use my gang to come back and kill that family member.
Wow.
And that's what really pushed me towards the gang.
That was your goal.
That was my goal in
Yeah.
life. And we did a lot of stuff to this family member. I'm glad and thank to God that we didn't take his life.
You could be
but
in prison now.
I could.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I shouldn't even be here right now
Wow.
talking with you. A lot of my friends passed away at a really young age. I knew that my purpose in life was to die young. I had my funeral planned out.
Wow.
That was our trajectory, to either make it into the prison system, to be known as a MM member, which is the Mexican mafia, or to die for our gang here in Yakima. And so really I didn't believe in anything at that moment. Didn't believe there was a God or Satan of any of any kind. And so I had a lot of friends that were really dabbling into Satanism, into 666. And we started doing seances, and I was like, well, I want to see if this spiritual life is real.
Yeah.
And the demonic world was very real.
Yes.
I knew that at that moment that there was a God and that there was Satan. But I decided to follow Satan and make him my God.
Wow.
Because I felt like God wasn't there for me when I was molested.
Had let you down. Yeah.
When my dad left for another woman, and he was following God, and very religiously. And I thought to myself, well, what's the point, right? So I really gave myself over to that dark side. And, you know, really coming into becoming an early father at the age of 17, I decided to, by that time at 17, had done so many, we call it earning our stripe,
Okay.
right? As you're climbing the ranks in the gang. And, you know, decided to, I'm going to hold back. Now it was more of the business perspective of things. My brother, he used to sell a lot of drugs here in Yakima. His whole trajectory for him was to become, you know, mafia. So he came from Mexico, and that was his thing. So he told me one day, hey, what are you doing? You know, you guys are killing each other here on the streets. Like, you should be actually using the gang for your own profit. And it made so much sense to me. And so we used the gang to really traffic drugs, guns, and all this other stuff. And so, not trying to glorify it.
No, I know you're
as
not.
well. And so, you know, that took me into getting even deeper into the harder drugs.
Sure.
Started with cocaine, and from cocaine to methamphetamines. It wasn't the meth that we have today. It was a little different, but I got addicted when I came across crystal meth. I was like, this is it.
Wow.
This is the drug. And I stopped drinking, smoking weed. I stopped doing everything for this drug, and I said, oh, this is great.
What age would you have been at that time?
I want to say 18.
Okay.
Around 18 years old. By that time,
You're a father too.
I am a father at this time. By that time, my son's mom is getting fed up with my lifestyle,
Sure.
because I'm not coming home. I'm just, providing, but it's, drug money.
You're not there.
I'm holding down a warehouse job because it's something that you're doing. That way you're keeping
You're
law
covered,
enforcement
yeah.
away from you. And I didn't have an education. I didn't finish high school. I didn't really think about any type of education. Said this is going to be my life. And every day was whatever life brings. That's how I used to live.
Wow.
And so my son's mom got fed up with it and left, and which I don't blame her. And decided, hey, I got really nothing to look forward to. So I really dove deep into the drug life, right? So much so to where at the age of, I want to say 23, I'm already picking up charges. So I'm in and out of juvenile.
Okay.
I'm going to different treatment centers. My mom can't really hold me down. And I'm, officers are dropping me off at the home as a runaway, and I'm taking off the back end.
Wow.
Right. And it was just, the pull of the brotherhood of being in the gang was so strong. And obviously the demonic forces that had a hold of me, and the chains that I had over my life by addiction.
And it's something of a family, isn't it?
It is. It portrays to be.
Yeah.
Right. And this is the lie that we
Yes.
actually believe. And that's all it is a lie. It's a veil, right? And so that's what the word says, right? It's a veil that's over our eyes.
Right.
And so at this time, a lot of friends have already passed away.
Wow.
A tremendous amount of them. And so at the age of 23, I am, find myself surrounded by people. I am going in and out of trap houses. Now my gang doesn't want nothing to do with me because I'm a full-on drug addict. And I am selling just to keep my habit up.
Sure.
Instead of actually making the money. I find myself homeless. I'm on these streets and going from trap house to trap house. And the reality is that, I was with people, and at this time I had met a girl and said, hey, you know what? She had her own kids, and said, hey, I would really like to start a family, right? So I get incarcerated for driving on a first degree. And I'm in Yakima City, and I do 8 months there and come out, and I'm on probation. So, I'm being a good boy. And so I'm getting a job, and she, she invites me to church, and I knew deep inside that I wanted a Christian woman if I ever was going to get married.
Right.
And she invited me to church, and I said, yeah, I'll go.
Because you wanted her to be faithful.
Well,
Partly.
to be honest with you, I was going because of her, not because I wanted to go to church or listen to anything that was coming out of church at that time. And I think this is, this was God's way of putting this woman in my life, and so, trying to be a dad and to, her kids, and, it was like an extra, it was like another opportunity to be a father.
Right.
And but the reality was that I hadn't taken care of any of my stuff, right? And so surely after bills are coming in, life's happening,
Yeah.
and it's just way overwhelming. This job that I have is not cutting it, and
Right.
probation and fines, and I'm like deep into $48,000 to the state, and that's why I tell people this is what it cost me to be down.
Right,
To
right.
be a gang member was $48,000.
Wow.
And I'm like, how am I going to do this? So I reverted back to what I knew best, was selling drugs. And I said, I'm only going to do it
For a little while.
for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm only going to sell it. I'm not going to do
Right,
the
use.
drug. And it was a lie, straight out of the pit of hell, right? And I began to use again. I began to use again. And finally she finds out and says, hey, you know what? I can't do this. Like, I can't have you around my kids. This is not right.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so by this time we already had got married, right? And we have a child of our own. And I said, if you can't accept my lifestyle, then I don't want to be with you. And I end up leaving. I end up leaving my kids. I end up leaving my wife, and I'm back to square one, being on the streets. And what I knew best was to kick down doors and to go collect for other, entities here in Yakima and stuff. That's how we were being used as gang members. And so one day I decided to step into a home, and I was just done. I was to the point where I wanted to take my own life. And to be very, very honest and transparent, I was hearing voices. I was listening to these voices. I knew that there were demons talking to me.
Yes.
And I was seeing appearances and talking to them, and I said, I'm just going to end it. Like, there's just no hope, and no one wants me around. Anything that had value to my life, just I threw it to the trash. And I break into this home, and I remember I leave, and I go into this trap house, and it's very close to there. And thank God neighbors seen where I went, and the officers surrounded the house. I end up being taken out of the home, and I get put in the back of a police car. Now I'm an adult, not looking at residential burglary. And for the first time in my life, I actually felt like this weight come off. Like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like, I was to the point where I was about to kill myself.
Right.
And this was like a form of salvation.
It's a relief, yeah.
Yeah, it was. And so I hadn't slept in weeks because of the meth. And I passed out behind, in the back of the police officer's car. So as I come into the county jail, which is my second home, it is. I have real estate there.
Yes.
And so as I'm coming into B tank, it's very known in Annex. It's a Sureño tank. And so as I'm coming in, I see a lot of my friends there, and they're like, "Hey, what's up?"
Sure.
And I sleep the first week, but when you're there, you have to program, right? As a gang member, you have to soldier up. That's what we call it. So they give you a week to get recuperated, and I met a guy by the name of Cosmo that I knew who he was on the outs, and so I got to really know him there. And he was headed up to the federal penitentiary, and he was like, hey, so he was the shot caller. He was the llavero, that's what we call it, in that tank, and said, hey, I'm giving you these keys. So I ended up taking that, and I thought to myself, I have nothing to really look forward to. And it goes back into when I was young, like, this is my chance to go into the prison system to show to show who I really am.
Wow.
God had a different view on things. Right. And,
Thankfully.
2 months in, I receive a visit, and it's through a monitor, and I'm thinking it's my mom, right? And it wasn't. It was my wife, and she came in, and she showed me, baby, and I can't cry. I can't cry at that moment because that's showing weakness.
Right.
And she's looking at me, and it's like, don't you care? And it's like, I do, but I can't show
Right.
that I care. Not in here. And I told her, and she goes, I want a divorce. She goes, I can't do this no more. And I said, okay, it's fine. I told her, go find a man that could actually be a man, and that could be a father to these children, and a husband to you. And she was just blown away by my response. And the reality of the things was that I was trying to push her away. I really was. I knew that I was going to go do prison time. I didn't want to have that in the back of my mind. And she told me this. She goes, I still love you, but Jesus loves you more.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't want to hear about Jesus.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about your Jesus right now. And I hung up and I got up and I went and I started working out. And as I was working out, I began to have a conversation with God. And I told him, if you're that God that everyone says you are, like, change me. I'm done. Like, I am done. That very second, I had an encounter with God. And I hear about encounters that are very beautiful with the Lord. Mine wasn't that way.
Okay.
Mine was more of a fire coming down, and I was on my knees crying, and I literally had to beg God to stop.
Wow.
And
Right there in the tank.
right there in the tank, and people are looking at me like, "Who?
I'm sure.
What's going
Yeah.
on with this guy?"
Thought
And,
you were mental, I'm sure.
Yeah, and so I go into the shower because I don't want people to see me sobbing and crying. But at the very moment when I went into the shower, I just felt this overwhelming peace and love that came over me. I didn't know what that was. And so I come out of the shower and I go to my bunk, and my bunkie had already left. But he left a brand new study Bible on top of that.
Of course he did.
Yes, he did. Untouched, and it still had the stamp of Chaplain Cole on top of
Yeah.
it. It was a New King James. It was a paperback version. It was a study Bible, and I opened it up, and the first verse that I'm about to read, my eyes fall in there. It says, "For God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have everlasting life. For God did not send His Son into this world to condemn the world, but that the world through Him might be saved. He who believes in Him is not condemned, but he who does not believe is condemned already, because he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. And this is condemnation, that light has come into the world, and men love darkness rather than light, because their deeds are evil. For everyone practicing evil hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his deeds should be exposed. But he who does the truth comes to the light, that his deeds may be clearly seen, that they have been done in God."
Wow. Those scriptures.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'll call it Russian roulette, right? When I open the word,
Yeah.
and it's like, all right, Lord, speak to me. And
I need to hear from
He
you.
continued to do this throughout this time, and it just, I mean, it was a two-edged sword coming through my heart, through my soul, and I said, Lord, forgive me, forgive me for everything that I've done, and from that moment forward, I decided, I'm not gonna walk in this darkness. I am not gonna continue to live this life. Like, if this is my lifeline, like, I am taking it. Like, I wanted a change.
But
I
you're in a
wanted
gang
something.
tank
I am in a gang tank.
and probably wanting to go to the God pod.
Well,
But-
no,
Oh, okay.
that wasn't the case. Actually, I didn't want to go into the God pod.
Okay.
There was still a big part of me that was very prideful.
Sure.
And I said, I'm gonna follow God in here. I want to show these guys, who God is, or at least what I had found
Right.
about God. I didn't know much about Him, and so I just continued to be away from them, and was really just in prayer and reading the Word, because the Word was speaking to me.
Sure.
Like, it wasn't just stories. Like, it was actually, talking to me and showing me things. I knew that in the gang, you always look for someone to ride or die with you.
Right.
And I knew that He died for me, even though that I'm a sinner. He shed His blood on Calvary, when I had the fault and He had no fault.
Right.
And He became sin for me.
Right.
And that was just like mind blowing to me. And, I was like, you know what, Jesus, you're going to be my gang. And so I, at that time, not being discipled of any sort, that's how I treated it. So if anybody in the tank talked about Jesus, well, I was like, well, let's go to the corner. We're going to get in a
Take
fight
care of
here.
you, yeah.
We're going to take care of you. And thank God it never got to there. But surely they started showing me respect and come over and like, hey, will you pray for my wife and my kids? And I'm
wow.
like, yeah, let's sit down, let's pray. No, he's like, you pray. I can't be seen praying with you. Before I left that tank, I decided to actually, I wanted to know more about Jesus. I knew that there was a God pod. And I had been in the county many times, but had never kited in. And so I put in my kite. But before God pulled me out of that tank, we had prayer circles. Wow. So there was a lot of gang members that were going to send up. So a lot of them accepted Jesus, but we're like, how do how do we continue to believe in this if
Right.
we're gang active and we're going to go
Right.
into a federal prison or a state prison?
Big deal.
You know, and I didn't have any answers for them. And I said, you know, we're down unto death. Just like we were for the gang, it's the same thing for Jesus.
Right.
Like unto death, right? And I go, we look at what the disciples did. It was unto death, right? And so, you know, we really captured that. And they called my name and they rolled me up, and I'm going into the God Pod. And as I walk in, everybody's cheering, like, yay.
Sure.
And I'm like, whoa, like this is different. And this is 18th, this is right next door.
Right.
And so, yeah, a men of 60, tank of 60 plus overflow. So we had people on the floor.
Sure.
And I thank God that they had a bunk for me. I didn't have to sleep on the floor. But it was different because it was Jesus' breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
It is.
You know, and in between. And there was just so much there. It wasn't just a word. They had concordances and they had systematic theology and you name it. And I was just eating
study.
it up. That's all I did was study. And it's because I was just so hungry. You know, I was so hungry for the word. And, you know, by that time, my wife heard of what God was doing in my life. And I was writing her. She wouldn't visit. Finally, she came to visit. And I was talking to her. She seen a difference in me. But obviously it was jail talk.
Sure.
Yeah, we want to see if this is for real.
Well, sure.
And so, you know, I told her, listen, I might go to prison. You know, I might end up in prison and it might do 5 to 10 years. And I don't know if you're willing to wait that long, but if you're not, I totally understand. Like if God wants me to go to prison to preach to the homies, that's what I'm going to do. And if I have to die there, going into the mainline, because they were already telling me that when I went to prison that they were going to kill me.
Right.
That, you know, I was already X'd out, that I was a no good. That's what we call it. We call us dropouts, right? That drop away from the gang. And you know, I was willing to do that. I was really willing. Like, this is it. Like, this is my purpose in life. Like, I finally found a purpose. And so I was okay. I was okay if I went to the prison and died.
Right.
You know, I was just like Paul, telling the Lord, well, if you're going to send me there, I want to go talk to the head. I want to go talk to the Mexican mafia about Jesus. And if I die, well, then glory to you.
Right. Wow.
You know, and so God had other plans again. I go into not even sentencing. Well, actually, it was an arraignment, and I had already been talking to my attorney, and he said, hey, you know what, we're gonna do this, that, and the other, and there was a deal on the table, and I told him then and there, I was like, no, you know, I'm just gonna plead guilty. He's like, are you crazy? Like, do you know that they give you a max of 10 years? And I said, you know, it's okay. Like, the condemnation, the charge that was sitting over my head is forgiven.
Right.
He didn't understand what I was talking about.
No.
And so we went in and we did enter a guilty plea, and you know, the prosecutor was like, we got him. You know, we're gonna send him to prison, and the judge looks at me, and I can't even stare the judge in his eyes, and I'm just looking down, and he's like, Mr. Orozco, he goes, look into my eyes. And I did. And he goes, do you understand what you're doing? I said, yes. And I said, Your Honor, I have accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and he has forgiven me. I go, so whatever you do, it's your decision to make. And he said, do you have a problem? Do you have a drug problem? And I said, yes, I do. I believe I am freed from that now, but sure, yeah. And so he goes, you know, I'm not going to send you to prison. Oh, and the prosecutor was not having it.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, no. They were like, no, do you know who this guy is? And he had a colorful record. And I'm sitting there, and I'm not really like capturing what he's telling me. And so he's like, we're going to put you on a DOSA program. And we're going to send you to ABHS treatment center.
Great program.
And I said, okay. And prosecutor's like, well, we'll put him on the first chain. And then judge goes, do you have anybody that can pick you up? And I said, well, I'm married. I can have my wife pick me up. So he says, okay. And I'm like just shocked. And my attorney's looking at me like, this doesn't happen.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
And we didn't even request this. Like, this wasn't even on the table.
Right.
And I'm like, this is God. This is all God. So, you know, this was September 24th of 2010. God opened the doors to the county jail, released me to my wife, on her exact birthday.
Wow.
And so I was like so blown away by that. I was with my family, and she took me to ABH treatment center, and I checked in there. And even in ABHS, God began to use me.
Sure.
There was different electives, from smudge to Bible study to AANA. And I was like, I tried each one first, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to Bible study. And there was only 2 guys there. And we had this little room, and I had all this knowledge that the Lord had been just showing me.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, can I teach? And they're like, definitely, we don't know what we're doing.
Wow.
So I began to teach.
That's
and began to invite guys from my group to Bible study, and they began to come. And sooner than later, they shut down Smudge because all the natives were with us. And then we started praying for NA, and there was only about 5 of NA. We took over their room, and they took our room.
Wow.
And before we left, we were about, I want to say, 45 men strong, and we had took over AA.
That's
and it was the
amazing.
big chow hall. By that time, we were already connecting with the mission out there and with different organizations and ministries that were coming in to teach. And so I was released at an ABHS treatment center on December 24th of 2010. And so, I mean, just those dates right there, I'm like, wow, Lord.
The Lord shows you all those things. We just have a few more minutes. Your story is amazing, but I want people to know what you're doing now.
Okay,
Just
awesome.
to make it quick.
Okay, so God took me,
There's so much.
Yeah, God took me from there, and the reality of the things is that today I'm a Celebrate Recovery pastor
Right.
here at Yakima Foursquare Church.
Right.
But not only that, I'm a program manager for a program that's called Walkabout Yakima.
Yeah.
And so we do gang intervention and prevention. And so he definitely called me back into my Egypt. Working with the community partners, system partners. We work alongside the gang unit. And so I used to run from those guys. Now I'm working alongside them.
That's the way God works.
God has put me in a place where, I've got to sit down with the governor of the state, right, with Jay Inslee, with the senators, with everybody that is here, that we say that they're important,
Right.
that would never, ever thought that I would be in a room
Right.
with them, talking about gang prevention and intervention and how the program works. And so we work with young individuals that are from 14 up to 24 years old.
Okay.
And it's, just loving them right where they're at, and using our life story. We're called credible messengers, right? Because we are credible, we live the life,
Sure.
but yet Jesus changed our life.
Exactly.
And now we're beacons of hope, right? We're hope dealers. We're the light.
I love
in
that
this
name.
dark world. Yeah.
I love that name.
And so.
And you did say that your family is back together, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, my family's, we're back together, we're serving the Lord.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, God has done so much in you. And your story, we could do 5 or 6 sessions actually with all that he's done in you. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you coming today. And you do have a life scripture. Will you give that as we close?
Yes, that is Jeremiah 33:3. It says, call unto me and I will show you great and mighty things which thou dost not know.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what he's done in my life.
Amazing things. I mean, the things that you describe, even being released, when you were released to go to ABHS, that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that way. So God has blessed you. He's anointed you. He's doing an awesome work in you, and I know he's going to continue to do that. So thank you for being here with me today, and we're going to trust that. In fact, if you had something to say in just a minute or two, or in a minute, that's what you've got, what would you say to somebody who could be coming across this? Maybe it's a gang member.
I want to say that there is hope. I want to say that in Jesus, that Jesus is the life, that he is the foundation, that no matter where you're at in your life, that Jesus will pull you out of there and actually show you what life is really about.
Yeah, and he's the only one that can.
Yes, he's the only one that can.
So thank you for being with us today, and there is hope in Christ.
This is CBY, Christian Broadcasting of Yakima, your local Christian television station, bringing to our valley quality Christian programming for more than 40 years.